Walk the Talk America presents Guns and Mental Health, a podcast for firearms owners, clinicians, and the curious public. Did he say we're live?
Yes, we are, sir.
Something clicked in my headphones, and then he disappeared. I assume he was. Well, here's to another glitch-free Walk the Talk America podcast. We wouldn't be Guns and Mental Health podcasting if we didn't crash a few times along the way. I'm Jake Wiskerson, joined by Michael Sedini and Tom Cruz. Not that Tom Cruise. This is a different, better-looking Tom Cruise. And good morning to everybody. It is still morning in all of our time zones across America, so welcome if you're streaming, and if you're not streaming, welcome wherever you are and however you may be listening. Tom joined us because of a mutual colleague who happens to be here in Reno, and she's like, I think you should meet these folks and do magical things together. So thanks to Janine Ward, and a shout out to her and the CASAT team up at the University of Nevada for connecting us. I'm going to stop there because Tom has a lot to say about himself, and I always fumble these things away or skip over something important or just, completely fail to remember some large, angle. So, Tom, welcome, sir, and take it away. The floor is yours, as they say.
So, yeah, my name's Tom Cruz, not the real one, but it helps me get in a lot of doors and restaurants. Yeah, so I served 26 and a half years in the Army. I just retired in October of 2021, and I had a pretty good career. I spent a lot of time. I was a mechanic at first, and then I did counterintelligence, and then I did a human intelligence, and I actually retired out in NATO during that time. So, really good career, but my career isn't what I'm really famous for. What I'm really famous for is in 2010, November, I took my fiance, which is now my wife, and you'd have to ask her why. She's still my wife. Took her hostage for 7 hours. And I don't remember the situation, and I was going to kill us both. And so the only reason I'm alive today and she's alive was her quick thinking, her quick assessing of the situation, and being able to talk me down, talk people that were calling me, and dealing with the police all at the same time while being a hostage during that situation.
This has particular relevance, obviously, to our topic. And, we're a suicide prevention organization at our core. You work in suicide prevention for your normal day job now. You travel around the country with your family, and I definitely want to get into that. But let's back up just a little bit. This was many years ago, and it was not handled correctly. So I want you to tell that story the way that we heard it the first time we met, because it's powerful, and it's goosebump inducing and hair raising, and it made me want to chew my knuckle off out of frustration for the way that the officers who responded dealt with everything, because ultimately I think that's probably why everything worked out the way it did. But we don't want that to happen ever again. And so now part of your job is to try to invite people to take a look at their policies and protocols. But go ahead and work through the story, because, when you open up a podcast saying, yeah, I took my wife hostage, people's ears tend to perk up a little bit. I'm sorry, what? So tell us.
So, I don't remember the situation a lot. So everything I say is from my wife being in there, and, parts I do remember are not good. It wasn't a fun 7 hours for her or I in that situation, definitely for her. So, yeah, I had sent out, I guess, text messages and emails out to people, and they started to call in, and I had barricaded us in the room. But I did what was weird, and what they thought was weird afterwards was I had taken my dog and made sure my dog was outside the room. So the dog wasn't barricaded in the room. It was only my wife and I barricaded. And so, there was people starting to call me and text me and starting to realize, and this is 3 a.m. It happened around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then, people start getting the text messages. They start realizing what was going on. People were calling me, family members. A lot of people started messaging. And what we need to understand when a person is suicidal or, in a mental health state that is not good, it isn't about you. It isn't about what your opinions are, your thoughts, how you would handle the situation. It really is about that person inside that room dealing with that issue. Because looking back now, there's a lot of people that were saying things to me, and they were trying to convince me what I was doing was wrong, or look at it a different way, or look what I was doing to them by doing this, which was actually almost validating what I was doing. They were kind of almost encouraging me, you're a burden. And that's kind of how I kept hearing it. Right. And I was like, well, okay, you guys are just helping me go through this. Right. And so My wife was able to see that and understand, and like, try to like talk them down. Or after I would hang up on certain people, she would then talk to me and be like, that's not true. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're talking. She was very coherent and was able to get through. The police did show up, obviously. It caused a big deal. There was information that was given to them that wasn't true, which did escalate it a little bit higher. And again, I don't fault the police. I love police, work with them all the time. But they did handle the negotiator did handle a little improperly, kind of just telling me what I needed to do, what they were doing. They were telling me how they were stacked on my door, how they were going to come in and get me. And again, in a mentality of a veteran that has, or anybody, I don't want to just single it to veterans, but we're very specific and very alpha and from where I came from and what I had been doing, that was now a challenge to me. And because I already knew their protocols, because I had worked with them before on stuff, in the past, I knew exactly how this was, everything that was going on. And then she was telling me the opposite. I was asking for leadership. She wouldn't give me leadership. I kept asking for leadership. She wouldn't give it to me. Kept telling me she's the only one I can talk to. And I kept saying, no, there's other people. I know my leadership's probably down there. I know you're in a van. I know you got my house surrounded. Like, I know these, like, and the back and forthness, obviously it was now me in my bad mental state being challenged by somebody, which was not good. And you don't do that to somebody in that situation, because at the end of the day, you're risking a lot of lives. You're risking, even if they would have stormed in, they didn't know the layout of my house. I knew the layout of my house. I knew where I was. I was the one that had a hostage. It would have ended. Yes, they would have got me. But at the end of the day, there would have been a lot more damage and more collateral damage that didn't need to be done that way. But again, my wife recognizing this, stepping into it, realizing what was going on, she took control of talking to them while she was trying to talk to me and trying to handle both sides. Like, hey, I'm the one in here. Let me handle it. I got this. Let me talk to them. You're making them angry, or all this stuff. She was trying to really take control of the situation. And really, you got to commend her for being a cool-headed through all that. It was not a good situation for her at all. It wasn't easy. It wasn't nice. And so for her to be able to continue to navigate around everybody else, from family members to friends to police, that was pretty, again, the only reason I'm alive today.
More about how that all unfolded afterward, because it's very unusual that somebody does keep a cool head while they're in that situation. She must have loved you very much, must have seen through your outward behaviors into the human on the inside, that maybe you had just forgotten who you were for a while. But then, what was the resolution there?
So finally, I did snap out of it. And I am like I am right now. I'm like, oh crap, I've got a gun, I've got Hershey's bound. I'm like, I'm barricaded. I'm like, I knew, but I didn't know. And like when I came to like I am now, I really was realizing, and I realized everything that was going on. And I had unbound her, told her to leave. I was like, hey, you can leave, just go. And I was sitting in between her and the door, all right? And I just slid down to my knees and she walked by. And the police were telling her, get out. He's letting you go, go. But she knew what was going to happen if she left that room. She knew the minute she walked out that door, the minute she walked outside that house, what was going to happen. I would either gone out by myself or I would have gone out by police. And so instead of doing that, she stopped and just sat in front of me and just sat there with me and was just like, talk to me. What's going on? What's wrong? We'll get through this. I'll help you through this process. I'll get you, I'm going to follow you to the hospital, blah, blah. And at this time, again, she's only my fiance. So she really doesn't have any connection, I don't want to say dedication, but she didn't have legal binding to stay with me and work through all this. Like she could have easily went back to, our home state and was like, I'm out, but she didn't. So I was able to finally dismantle. She got me to dismantle the gun. I put it away. And then I walked outside the house and she held my arm and she pushed me out. We were like, we're going out. And at that time, yes, I got jumped on. The police activities. What was very weird about that situation, again, was when I got handcuffed and put in the police car, I got put in the front seat with the police officer. And I was just explaining to the driver, police officer, everything that was going on. This is what I remember. This is what was going on. This is where the gun's at. Hey, my dog's down here. I was just telling him everything. And he was like, oh, okay, thank you. But they ended up handcuffing her and zip tying her and putting her in the back of a police car. which I thought was very weird. And so they sent us to two separate hospitals. And she ended up, we both get tested for, psych stuff. And, she was supposed to be crazy for staying in there. So she had to get tested. And then I had a blood test, urine test. I had every test done on me. And I didn't drink anything that night. I'd never done a drug in my life. I literally had just snapped. And I was, again, fully compliant at the hospital, telling them everything I could remember. This is what this is what I know. This is where everything's at you're asking for. And so they, we kind of went back and forth, and they kind of didn't have anything because of other circumstances that they kind of just let me go. And they finally let her go after she did a lot of work on her side. It was not easy either on her side just to get checked out and leave. She had to go through almost more or harder process than I did. And so once the local police just let me go, they were like, oh, we're going to let you go. I knew that wasn't the right situation. And luckily I was in Maryland at the time. And so I was able to self-refer myself down to Walter Reed and be stuck and put myself in a Army psych ward and self-refer myself. And the only one that had access to see me and know if I done it, because if you know anything about a psych ward, when you call there, if you ask, hey, I want to talk to Tom Cruz, they'll say, we don't know what you're talking about, because you have to sign or release who gets your information, who can talk. And she was the only one I allowed it. She was the only, none of my family members, none of my friends, nobody else. Only her was on that list. And again, being my fiance and being 3 hours away through DC traffic, I didn't think she was ever going to come back. I thought for sure she was gone. But what was weird is the next day, because she couldn't come the next day, because I'd self-admitted at 6:00 at night. The next day, right at the end of visitation, because she did have to go through traffic and all that stuff, she showed up with like 10 minutes left, walked through that psych ward door. And you want to talk about an emotional person, I literally crumbled right there again. Right. I was just like, I was in shock. She was obviously in shock because it was the first time she had seen me. It was very, and it was really, and if you talk to her, she will actually say that was a turning point for her too. She really wanted to see me one more time to see what was wrong with me. What was going on? Is this still the Tom that I remember? And no, that 7 hours doesn't define him from what I know of him. And so really, and me seeing her show up was just like that. That is another reason why I am alive today, why I continue to do what I do today, because I had somebody show compassion, show support, show empathy, show me something that I had not ever really seen or felt in my life. And that's disturbing to say, because obviously, got parents and friends, and I've had military, my long military. I was at 16 years already at that point, but that was the first time that somebody I felt actually cared about me.
Yeah, it's interesting because that type of situation, it would be similar to the type of situation if you would have had a domestic violence incident, right, and hauled off on her. And I'm sure 10 out of 10 people were telling her, this is your time to leave. Like, this is not going to get better. This is going to happen again. Right. So the odds are probably against the relationship. Did she ever tell you, like, yeah, everybody's saying leave? Like, or, I mean, you had to probably have felt that, right? And you probably told her you should probably leave, I'm sure, right? Because you just feel awful about things like that. It's a very unique situation. She's a very strong woman.
And the thing is, she came and saw me every day at the psych ward until I got out. And I was in there about 15, 17 days or something like that, because there was a holiday in there. And so I did end up staying longer. And so she came and visited me every day. And what's funny is, and I think I got it right here, you're not allowed to have anything when you go into psych ward. They just strip you of everything. You're literally, because, no shoelaces, no nothing. You're in slip socks and stuff. She would come in every day, and she would sneak these in. These are Post-it notes. And they would just say things, they're just all these little things like, just in case you need them, I love you. And all these other little things she would sneak in and give to me. And again, that was another thing that helped me really be able to get through the process. Because when I was in there, I didn't get, I to this day still don't have a true diagnosis. They want to claim it's my combat. They want to claim it's because of what I saw. It's claim what I did. It's easy to give me Zoloft and tell me I have PTSD. And here's your certified mental health diagnoses, and just have a good day. And I really wasn't, with her support and what she was doing. It helped me fuel to do what just to get out of there. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of people against us, both in the military, outside the military. Even the military at one point, even when I got out, told me, "We're watching you," and that was from the Pentagon. Like the Pentagon said, "We're watching you," and I was like, "Okay, like watch me." And so it kind of helped me fuel to do what I've done, for the past 12 years.
What's really funny is I spent 2 years working at a child and adolescent residential inpatient hospital that was, it's a locked hospital for kids and teenagers. And you put those Post-it notes in front of the camera, and all I think was contraband. But stuff like that can really help. It can really aid the healing process. I'm very curious now because I didn't know about the no quote unquote official diagnosis thing until just this moment. I have a lot of questions about how they justified keeping you there without a diagnosis. Maybe it was crisis admit. How long were you in there at Walter Reed?
About 15, 16 days, 17 days, something like that.
That's a long time, and I don't know how the documentation works, but
Well, that's actually
I'm
standard.
shocked.
You will stay.
No, I mean without a diagnosis. Like we're just keeping this guy here, and we can't tell you why. Like that's wild to me. But to that point, a lot of people will ask. I mean, we get it all the time, Mike, where people are like, well, it's got to be mental illness if you take a gun and go shoot up a mall, right? On the flip side of that is like, we get these stats of saying that X number of people or X percentage of people don't have a mental health or mental illness diagnosis when they go perpetrate whatever they perpetrate or, take their own lives by suicide. And I always try to push back and say, you don't understand. This is only speaking to those we capture within the system and slap a label on and send up to insurance. Like that's who we're talking about when they say they didn't have a diagnosed mental illness. That means that they had to have come in for care at one point. But in a moment of rage, in a moment of disorientation, in a moment of, slipping into a fugue state or whatever you did at that time, you won't meet criteria for a diagnosis. So even if it looks like, wow, this person just completely snapped and went off the rails, they must be mentally ill. The layperson goes, yeah. I mean, even I as a practitioner goes, yeah, that's not normal. That's completely abnormal. But you have to meet criteria, and those criteria in the DSM are usually time limited. There's some sort of parameter on it that says, has to have displayed symptoms for a number of weeks or months or days or whatever, right? 7 hours of a weird moment does not meet diagnostic criteria for anything as far as I know. Yeah, you're in a tough spot there as a practitioner trying to like pin this thing down, and it's like, well, maybe it was supernatural. I don't know, but we do know that we have brief psychotic episodes, and maybe that's what happened. But I do want to know more about what you think led to it. But then also, like, how did you get received back into the military family and community after that? Because we don't hear this. What we hear is Isaac Ritchie saying, I did the right thing. I checked myself in. I got healed. I came out the other side, and now my rights are taken away. Even though I got to perform in the military for however long I was there, after discharge, some record of my attendance at this hospital is sitting in some repository, and now I have a black mark against my name forever and ever. Like, that's the story we usually hear, and that's what keeps everybody away from care. So this is a very strong evidence, anecdotally though it may be, that it can be done. Somebody can heal and go on to, decade and a half later, you're just fine, right?
Yeah, so we'll rewind. So I had been in Iraq in 2008, and my boss we were about to come home, and my boss asked, hey, I need to go back home early because I got to take care of some stuff. So me and another guy were tasked to bring the soldiers back from Iraq. And we was like, yeah, go ahead, go handle your business. We got this. No big deal. We've done this before. And what we didn't know is he was having issues at home. And this guy had been one of our senior leaders forever, had been through all the combats before us, had been, basically the dad of us. And he went back home and he was having issues, and he ended up killing himself. And so I had to go back to the U.S., bury him, come back, get the troops, bring the troops back, and then have another ceremony. So it really messed with me, right? That was the first time I had somebody that close to me die by suicide. So I went and sought help, but I didn't want to seek help on the base. I went and sought it off base because I didn't want no one to know. And so it was still a provider through the military, but it was on the civilian side. And I went and saw this lady, And she goes, you're just grieving. You're going to be okay. And I said, no, this really messed with me. I think this is, a little bit more. I don't know. She's like, well, this is part of the grieving process. You're going to be okay. You're going to get over it. And at the end of that session, I was like, ma'am, your session was so great to me that I think I'm going to go ride my motorcycle into a wall now. And she kind of just laughed at me and was like, no, you're not. You're going to be fine. And so after that incident, I had the mentality that that was how therapy was going to be. And so I never sought therapy again because I was like, one, they don't understand me. I'm a veteran. They don't understand our culture. They don't understand how close we get. This is more than a grieving process. So I didn't seek any help. Now you fast forward 2.5 years. Now I try to take myself and another person. So while I was in the psych ward, and like I tell my guys, I work inside the jail system here in Texas. I tell the guys, you have two choices. I had two choices while I was in there. I was either, one, going to be what everybody wants me to be, the veteran that is crazy, psychotic, and this is what, this is who he is. Or the other one was, what am I used to doing? I'm used to dusting myself off, picking myself up, and going forward, right? And so what did I do? The whole time I was in the psych ward, I wrote in our, because you get little books, you get little zebra books, and you can write poetry and draw or whatever you're going to do. And so I really focused on, why am I this way? What happened to me? I know it's not just because of my military career. I know it's not just because of what I saw and did. It's got to be more than that. And so I actually took myself back and started looking at, what was I going through that time? What was I going through right before that? What was I going through 6 months to a year before that? And I started really dissecting things. And really, we don't have time, but like my whole history of like being in charge. People always see me as the leader. I'm the first one to graduate high school. I'm the first one to go to college and graduate college. I'm the first one to do a lot of things within my circle. And so it's always been on me. And so I started to see that there was things that I wasn't able to control within that last 6 months to a year before the incident, that it all piled up. So it wasn't just that incident that caused it. There was things way before that I wasn't taking care of that were weighing on my mental. And so when I was in the psych ward, I dissected all that stuff. And another thing I also did was I went and everybody that talked to me that night, I sit there and wrote down what they said. I wrote down what I remember them saying and how I took it. And then I also knew that if I was going to do this again, this is what I want you to say to me. So I'm basically giving you a playbook that if I do this again, this is what you say. There were certain people that came back and said they would not change what they said that night, even after me telling them how I took it, how I received it. And I kind of got upset at that at first. But what I took that from that was everybody is in their own state. Everybody sees me in a different way. Everybody understands the situation a different way. Nobody was there directly for that situation. So a lot of people have their own vision and bubble. And then I've got to understand where these people are at. And then I got to understand that for me, I can't have gray area friends anymore. You either support Tom or you don't. I don't have time anymore for people that may or may not be on me. And the people that don't support me, that I have to keep around me in my circle, I know what they're there for. I know what they're good for and what I can use them for and what they're using me for. The supporter group, that's the group that is going to actually stick with me, that if something happens again, they know exactly what to do. And the situation will end a lot faster, a lot cleaner, and a lot safer because that team is already aware of how to deal with me. So when I was doing that in the psych ward, I took a lot of initiatives inside there. I went to outpatient therapy. I went to anger therapy. I went to NA. I went to AA. I'd never done a drug in my life. I went to all these things. And then I got to the final stage where they said, I was part of the Wounded Warrior side at the end. And they said, okay, I was with some of our most magnificent soldiers that had missing limbs, other mental health issues. And kind of at that point, they're like, you're done. Here's your retirement stuff. And I really fought. I said, I think I can still be a use to the military. I think I still really have a purpose. And so I asked to stay. I said, what's the process for saying that? And they kind of laughed at me. They're like, dude, with your stuff, not really. And so I really fought the system. I had a really good doctor and nurse that was working with me and was able to understand me. And went through more testings, more programs. And they kind of was like, okay, we're going to let you stay in. And so I got the right to be able to stay in the military. Again, I don't know nobody. My daddy's not a general. I don't have, friends that I called up for, bring me back. And I was able to stay in. And so I got past that hurdle, being able to stay in the military. My second hurdle was I have a TSSCI clearance. And so I was like, oh, well, I mean, cool, but I couldn't do my job without that either. So I was like, if I stayed in, then they were going to give me something else. So I ended up filing and doing more stuff. And they ended up granting me to be able to keep my TSSCI within about 4 months of getting out. About 4 months of getting out of the psych ward and back into the military, they gave me it back and then said I was kind of on a probation for a year. Said that we're going to watch you. We're going to definitely keep track of you. Keep doing what you're saying you're doing by going to all these programs, and you'll be good. And so I was able to stay in. I was able to keep that. And then they put me in a leadership position. Now, whether that was right or not, they ended up putting me in charge of soldiers. And that's an interesting story.
What's TSSCI?
So it's a top secret clearance.
Okay. So, that's the appropriate way. If I have a bias, the bias is to give people chances. And I think that more often than not, the bias by people who have attorneys in their ear is to take those chances away. And I don't agree with that. It's like when we get asked in my field to write things like recommendation letters or termination letters or whatever, it's like we've forgotten the phrase "at this juncture." Like, from all I see, at this juncture, he's fine, right? I don't know, 5 minutes from now, he's going to not be fine. But none of us have a crystal ball. And I wish more people would embrace that humanity and just say, well, we're not seeing anything. It's probably just a one-off, instead of taking the default of protectionism and legal rear covering and saying no, because then that ends up ruining more people's lives. And I just have to wonder, because nobody has any research on this, I wonder how many of those people who take their lives are doing so as a result of meaninglessness. You asserted yourself. You said, I think I still have something to offer. I think you guys benefit from my presence here. And they listened. And that's awesome. And I think we should do that more often. Mike, were you going to say something?
Yeah. You're empowering the person to get back into society and get back on their feet, which I absolutely agree with you, Jake. Like, once you leave somebody stranded on an island and you're just like, okay, you figure it out now. I mean, you feel hopeless, right? And then that's when those thoughts creep in. But Tom, I have two questions. First one, and you said you don't remember much about that night, so a lot of it is your wife. But was there something in particular that maybe your wife told you, she said to you, that she saw a difference in your eyes? Like one thing, or was it just a reassurance of, I love you, do not listen to them. I love you, do not listen to them. You see what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's what she said, because really, even people that were talking to me on the phone thought we were being robbed. They did not know it was me talking to them. They were like, that is not him at all. So I was really, really gone. And so she just kept doing the best she could. She kept reassuring, she kept saying, things over and over, kept countering everybody that was saying things that were negative. And because she could see how it was making me worse. She could see my movements with my hands. She could see the anger building up. So she would do everything on the opposite of that to counter the conversation. Again, amazing situation, amazing awareness to be able to do that under those circumstances.
Yeah, and obviously she's a very calming presence. And Jake, you're big on emotional functioning, and I think we'll give you a nod to that. That's almost everything you're talking about, right? Because she had every right to be excited or loud or pissed or hurt and everything like that. So she's able to calm you down. Second question I have, because I'm super curious, and I'm sure other listeners are going to ask this. You took somebody hostage. How did you not go to jail? Like, I thought that was completely illegal. Like, if I took somebody hostage right now in my house, I would assume that there's no getting out of that. And that's going to be something that I'm going to have to face a lot of legal challenges. What is what is it that prevented you from going to a prison or a jail for?
Again, 100%. I don't know. I mean, I have a file. You go into that city, that police. I mean, I'm on file. There is no, and even when I go had to fill out my security clearance stuff, they would ask me, one of the last questions is, have you been arrested? And I always answered, yes, I have. I've been arrested, but but they were like, once they digged into it, they were like, yeah, well, you weren't. I go, well, I haven't been handcuffed. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I haven't been in a facility. But I was arrested. So I will always answer that, because if I don't, and then you find out, it's worse. From what I understood, there was a lot of things on both sides. Like I talked, how the situation was handled. There was a lot of oopsies, I guess, by both sides. There was a lot of misinformation that was given to them beforehand. So I kind of believe that they were on the same, what like Jake is saying, kind of saw the situation. They kind of was like, okay, everything ended calmly. There wasn't everything that they were told was inside the house, wasn't inside the house. I came out peacefully. I just think there was a lot of things that led to that didn't have me to. And I went to, and once they ran all the tests on me, and I was like I am right now, I wasn't, crazy at them. I wasn't like flailing at them, and I wasn't doing anything. I think there was a lot of factors that played into. I don't know 100%. I don't think I'll ever know. I've seen the police paperwork and all that, police reports, but it was kind of just like they were just going to turn me over to the military kind of thing, and they kind of were just leaving themselves out of it after everything kind of like calmed itself down. It wasn't. I guess in maybe their mind it wasn't as bad, even though that was. I mean, that's a pretty not a good situation. I think there was a lot of other factors that played into it that, behind the scenes, I'm not 100% sure.
100%. And I think that, I guess why I wanted to highlight that is we have a lot of listeners that are just afraid of law enforcement when it comes to gun rights, right? And we've seen instances, I know personally, I've had a discussion with a law enforcement officer, and also too, I have a former guest of the show whose father was red flag lawed, and it is always a judgment call. Not every cop is out there to ruin your life. Some of them will try to use logic and try to, and I think it sounds like you may have had a couple of officers that had a discussion, huddled up, really thought about this, walked through it, saw your behavior, saw that you weren't a threat, that you were cooperating in terms of like, you realized something was off, and they made that call, which can happen too. I know, I've talked to officers who have said, the red flag law is the last place I want to go. I'm going to try to make a judgment call before I ever have to do that. So, I mean, I guess there is some hope.
Well,
that not everybody's.
So I know my wife played obviously a big role in that too, because obviously when they were questioning her and asking her, obviously she could have filed charges and all kinds of stuff on me and really ruined both my personal and military career, obviously. And she didn't file any charges against me. Didn't, even when they were trying to get them to, even when the military was trying to get her to get me to get file charges against me, she stood fast and did not waver and didn't bend to the pressure and didn't file anything both on the military side or civilian side on me.
I want clinicians who are listening to hear that, because I think a lot of times we're trained by our professors and our supervisors to hear stories like that and leap right to, you must be married to a narcissist. And we need to make sure that these episodic events are taken as such and not try to generalize to broader patterns of behavior. So, if you're listening and you're hearing this story, just keep that in mind, because this may land in your lap someday in your own office. Don't read too much into it. Take it for what it is and take things at face value. Don't try to read into them and ascribe more than there actually is present. Did you have kids at that point? And where were they if you did?
So we did, but they were in different states, so none of them were at the house. And one of the things that was told me when I was in therapy was, because of the way I treated my dog, when I put my dog outside the room and didn't have him involved in it, they thought that if there were kids inside the house, it probably wouldn't have happened either, because I probably wouldn't have, because if I had the rationality to put my dog outside the room, that if there was kids inside the house, that it probably wouldn't have happened. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen later on or a different venue or different way, but yeah, so our kids weren't, they were in different states at the time.
I'm not trying to make light of this situation at all. But right now, I know if my wife were listening to this podcast, her main concern would be the dog. Like literally, she'd be like, wait, was the dog okay though when he was in the cop car?
Hey, there's a whole nother story about that. You want me to tell you that one real quick?
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we had a pug, a purebred champion pug. I put him down in the bathroom downstairs, and I told the police that because I knew they were going to bring in their dog, and I didn't want their dog to eat my dog. So I told them exactly where my dog was. And when I was in the psych ward, because she was only my fiance, she wasn't allowed to get my dog out of the police. So they did put my dog at the police doggy pound. I didn't know they had one, but they do. And so she would go try to get the dog. They wouldn't give her the dog. So I had to get out. When I got out, that was one of my first places to go, was go get my dog. They ended up giving me my gun back. They didn't give me my dog back. They go, oh, well, we don't know where your dog's at. We blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and this went on for a couple of days. What it came out to be is, then they called me and they go, well, we found your dog. And then they go, well, part of the process is that we've got to take his manhood. And I'm like, oh my God. He's like, why? Because they had given my dog away to another officer and renamed him.
What?
So then they had to get it back from the officer to give me back my dog. No lie. This was the conversation I had right coming out of a psych ward
That's insane.
was give me my dog back.
Of course, my amateur lawyer mind goes straight to, you gave somebody's property away. You can't do that. You're the state. You confiscated it. You can't just give it to somebody else.
I guess they thought
It's
I wasn't
illegal.
coming
Yeah, you
out.
would think the gun would be the one that they would have confiscated. A gun has a value. People love guns.
Dog doesn't have a serial number. Oh my goodness.
I guess
Man.
they thought I wasn't coming out. Like I don't know the rationality behind it, but I finally got him back. He obviously looked at me and resented me for the rest of his life because he had lost his stuff and then was renamed, and I didn't. We named him back.
Renamed and rehomed. So this,
Jake, one last thing I was
Yeah.
going to say to you, like, this is not this ending of the story isn't the typical like echo chamber ending for a 2A person.
no,
Right?
it's not. But I'll tell you what it leads nicely into is when I start soapboxing about these laws that people are passing in various states that are the so-called, gun storage laws that aim to penalize the parents if the child gets hold of a gun and does something bad with it. Then, okay, so imagine being that family. Your kid, let's say, shoots himself. Now you're in one of those states. You're going to take the parents or parent away and break up the home and disperse the kids to new homes, not probably to be renamed, but to be rehomed. Now you're just creating a ripple effect of more damage and destruction that who's going to pick that up? The system. Like we don't have enough foster kids to care for. We're going to just blow up homes. Enough damage isn't done by this kid who took his own life. Now we're going to break up your family too, to do what? Like, that's, in my mind, that's punishment. That's not discipline. That's not education. And punishment only serves the punishing people. It makes us all feel good like we did something, but really you did worse. Like, you made the situation absolutely worse. That's storage laws. Nice idea. Terrible in execution. Not even feasible. And here we have a living example of a poor dog who was taken away and neutered, and like that doesn't do anything for anybody. What are you thinking there? Like, I don't know. So anyway, I'd like to move on to what you're doing these days, because that's equally powerful. The fact that you bring your family around with you when you give talks, I think that's really, really cool. So back to you, sir.
So I was given a leadership role, and I had soldiers and civilians that ranged from the state of Maine down to Virginia. And a lot of people knew, I think, my situation, but not a lot of people knew. Like, I wasn't open about it, didn't want to, I was embarrassed, obviously. And I went to a leader, so they put me second in charge. And so I was second in charge of everyone. And then I had a great boss. And he talked to me, it was September 2012. He was like, it's Suicide Prevention Month. I want you to share your story. And I was like, oh, no. I was like, I wanted them to hate me, love me or hate me for my leadership, not because of my past. Right? Either you love me because I was a good leader, or you hated me because you thought I was a bad one. I was like, no. I don't think I can do this. And so I ended up going to talk to the wife, talking to her. We weighed all these things out. We're like, we're really being vulnerable here. We don't know how everyone's going to receive it. We did agree to it. And so in person and via Zoom and stuff, we shared our story. And the outpouring love from the soldiers and civilians to me and my wife was amazing. It was 180 degrees than what I thought it was going to be. They were coming out asking me, thank you for sharing. I'm going through stuff. I should go back to therapy. Oh, these are the issues I am dealing with. Like, it really opened them up to see me now in a different light than I thought I was being seen as a leader. And so that was a light bulb. I was like, this is probably why the military saw something in me. Because I didn't want to think that, and to Michael's thing is like, I didn't want the military to believe that I got one over on them. Like, ha, you let me stay in now I can do whatever. No, I didn't believe in that. I didn't know my purpose, and I didn't know what I should be doing. And I kind of think by somebody or whatever, it led me to to that point to now I'm educating it. And that was a light bulb. I was like, this is why they let me stay in. And so for the past 12 years we've been doing this, we've been traveling the world from the White House. I just got back from DC last 2 days ago. We've been to South Dakota. We've been to Italy. We've shared our story. And what's unique about how we share our story now is a lot of people always want me, just like this podcast. Y'all asked me to be on here. I am not the star of this show. If you ask me on a daily basis, because I've been diagnosed with everything that I have been, I don't care to be alive. Like for me, it doesn't matter to me if I'm alive or not. I really don't care. I stay alive because I have a great support system. I have great people in my life. I have benchmarks that I still have to achieve. I have benchmarks of others that I still want to see. Those help me stay alive on this side of the world. So I'm not the star of this show. My support system is the star of this show. So, I ended up getting married. She ended up marrying me. You have to ask her why. We did end up having, so we do have a lot of kids. So she has 4, I have 2, and we decided to have one together. And so he was born 2 years to the date of the incident. So my day is 3 November 2010. He was born 1 November 2012. And so for that day for me now, it doesn't have to be a dark day because I get to celebrate his birthday. So instead of me wallowing in my own, man, I'm so sorry, I should never, I get to celebrate his birth. And what's unique about him is, so we know that children that are raised in houses that have mental health disorders or domestic violence, or whatever, and it's all over TikTok. I mean, I'm not making this up. They get sheltered from it. They come and bring headphones or they hear it all and they think, they start to believe they were maybe the reason that happened. They caused it. They're not asked to help in the process. I didn't want my son or our son, my wife's watching, she's going to yell at me. Our son, I didn't want him to ever feel that the problems inside this house are his. The problems are mine. I am the problem inside this house, not him. And so I didn't want him ever to see me angry or upset or me staring off or me not knowing what's going on. I didn't want him to think it was associated with him. So he knows everything. He is trained in assist. He's trained in safe talk. He's trained in my triggers. He's trained in how to handle my triggers. He's trained in if he can't help me, that he knows to go get mom. He is part of my support. And even though he's only 12 years old and I know I'm putting a big burden on him, I'm also helping him feel part of this family, that he isn't scared of me for those reasons. And it has helped him be more outward about his emotions to us. It is also what I like to call a spy for his school. Because now that I've trained him on how to look for things and how to be and how to react to those things, he can identify those in his peers at school well before a teacher, therapy, families can, because he already knows what to look for. He already knows if a kid is acting this way, if he sees them reacting this, or if he's lonely or depressed. My son knows how to go and react to them, or if he can't, then bring it to the attention of either me or the school. And then, we'll deal it in a safe manner. So when we do this stuff, I always ask to do this. I said, you don't want me, you want them. You want to hear my original story and what I'm doing now, but you really want to hear how she handled it, what she said, how she did it, what it's like dealing with me now. And then you want to hear from my son. What is it like living with a dad with mental health illness, a veteran with mental illness? What does he exhibit? How do I help him? How am I part of the process? How does this help me? And so we've had him on the stage ever since he's been age of 7. Again, he's been on podcasts. He's here in Texas. He's actually talked to, we were invited to educate a CIT class, a crisis intervention team. And he ended up talking to them. We just got back from South Dakota and he talked in front of 600 mental health professionals. I really want him to feel comfortable, sharing this stuff, because we know our children, and you see it in the news there, it is going all the way down to elementary school that they're having issues and not knowing how to control their feelings or know how to express it or where to go for it. And I didn't want my son, 1, to be afraid of me, but 2, not know how to express himself in a world that's just getting crazier, and especially for his generation.
Are they with you right now?
There's not. So my wife's at work and my son's at school.
Darn, that would have been cool to just pause and bring him in, but we'll move forward. So how old was he when you first started talking to him about this?
Well, ever since he was born, we've had him at every conference, every event. He's been at every suicide conference, every suicide prevention talk I've done. This is all he knows, at least from what we do. He's been part of it ever since he was born.
I like that. And here's why I like that. I think we shelter our kids and in the wrong ways, right? We want to preserve their innocence for sure, as long as we can. I keep them away from horrific things, not inappropriately expose them to stuff that their little brains can't digest. But when you're brought up in a culture, and that's what it is, your family has this culture, the children are going to learn the culture. And I think you've done a great job of teaching that culture to them. I try to talk about this with my own children. They're 9 and 7. And since 2019, when they were 4 and 2, I've been doing this work. And so as I talk about it, as I say, I'm going to this conference, or I'm flying to wherever, I'm going down to SHOT Show. And now both boys are like, so you can teach people how not to shoot themselves? Yes, that's exactly it. And so they get trained in the firearm safety and the proper storage and responsibility. And I don't see a conflict with that whatsoever, because this is reality, and this is something to build into their minds, to their psyches, to their brain power, to know how to navigate these difficult circumstances. And then you can cross-link to things like frustrations on the baseball field and say, hey, look, you're experiencing this emotion, write it out. Don't avoid it. Express it to me. Tell me what you're going through. And so we don't slide into that place of despondency. I think if we can empower parents to own their own stuff well enough to teach it to their children, we're going to end up having a really good society out of this. I really appreciate that you're doing that. You're not just thrusting him into it and making him afraid of it. You're teaching him to embrace it. And by extension, you're essentially saying you're capable, right? You have the capacity to do this. And I think our kids have great capacity to do all sorts of things, as long as we lead them in properly, gently, gradually, not just drop them into the topic. That's inappropriate, because now they're having to figure out why they're even talking about the ugly topic to begin with. But if you bring it into them from the jump, that's pretty easy to navigate. Kevin asked, actually, because your wife's not here to answer this, were there any trainings or things that allowed her to remain calm and respond in the way that she did, or is this just her being a good human?
That's just being a good human. Like, we're trained in everything now, but neither one of us were trained in any of this stuff before that incident.
So, I think that speaks to the depth of a human's capacity too, just to be present and be calm and do what we know. Trust your instincts, right? We all have this ability. Formal training is nice, but I think with formal training, we end up looking to check boxes rather than just be present.
Well, she has, and I'm going to butcher it, so if she's listening or whatever, she's going to be mad at me later. But what she has a line that she uses now whenever she talks at conferences. What she says she does is, we as humans are always wanting to talk and give our opinions. She said, we're not predispositioned to listen, which is all she did, was listen and assess the situation, instead of just blurting out what everyone else was trying to tell me, what they thought I wanted to hear. She actually was listening instead of outputting. And I butchered that up, but she got it. She said it a lot better.
Yeah, I can't remember who. I think it was Norman Vincent Peale said it in his book, that people will tell you a lot when you just sit and listen, and then they'll think you're the best, you're the awesome person, and they know all this stuff about you, but really it was just because you gave them an avenue to express themselves and be present, instead of occupying that space with your stuff, right?
And so,
Tom, I have a question about your firearm ownership. Like, at the time that this happened, was it something that was important to you? I mean, obviously coming up through the military like you did, going to Iraq, the firearm could be way more than just a symbol of protection, right? It could represent the United States, the Constitution. I mean, you could have named your firearm, and I've known people that have done that. Was there ever a time where you thought, like, oh man, there goes my firearm rights? Like, you're sitting in the car. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I totally thought it was gone and done, which is why I was shocked when they gave it back to me. But again, because of what I've done and who I've been with, my gun used to lay around all the time, and I have a Sig Sauer that doesn't have a safety. So it was that's why we made the situation even more dangerous, because there was no control. So, but she, it just used to be around the house. I never really thought of it. I was just like, and my son, my children are trained in it. We've taken every one of our kids that could go to a range already, and trained all of them in it. Beforehand, it was just a thought for me, like, whatever. But now that I, had the incident, and I'm more aware of myself and understand that I'm the threat in the house, I have to put mechanisms and instructions in place now a lot better than I did before. One is I do understand that not everyone's kids or people are trained the same way that my family is. So I do have to put into account that if my son has friends over that, they may still think it's a toy. I do have to put into perspective that one, I don't have a true diagnosis. Two is that I'm not medicated, and that's by choice with my doctors and therapists and if there's any pharmaceutical people out there, there's a disclaimer, it's my own opinion. I just believe we give too much. I believe that I use a lot of holistic ways to deal with a lot of things that I enjoyed before the incident. And I believe there are people that need medication. I just think the amount we're giving is too much. And that if we balanced it with holistic things, that the amount and dosage would be a lot less. So that's my disclaimer. But I understand I'm the problem. And so I've had to do different things now. I have put a separation. My magazine isn't in my weapon anymore. There is separation. Why? Because separation in time gives my family the ability to be able to talk me down or remove themselves from the situation. There's a lot of things that I do now, educational wise, that I took for advantage beforehand, because again, I was alpha type. I was like, I got a gun, and that's me being egotistical, alpha, and everything else, and not really putting other people's feelings and situations in hand. I still can go out and shoot almost anybody. Like, it does not stop me from being able to do what I'm good at doing. I just had to put different mechanisms for myself, my family, my community. I did cause a disruption in my community. I have to put all these factors into circle, not just my own beliefs, my own ideas, my own whatever. I have to start thinking bigger, and I have to start putting other things in consideration. And I've done that.
To center a little bit more on your wife, I know she didn't have any formal training, but Clover Tack is asking, does her background, her upbringing, does that contribute to her ability to handle that so well? Because other people would certainly handle it differently.
Maybe you'd have to ask her. I mean, I know her background and all that. I think she's always been this way for the most part. So maybe it was upbringing. Maybe it was stuff her father, he passed away, but he was a Marine, Vietnam, recon, Purple Heart recipient. So I think some of that may have kicked in. I think she saw some of the same qualities that he used to exhibit in me. And so I think maybe that may have helped her a little bit, maybe deal with me.
Sure. Yeah. I hear this repeated theme coming out of your words that suggest that you are still a problem in your home. And forgive me if I'm for phrasing that poorly, but I'm not seeing it. I think you have confidence now that you're not actually in a bad state. The likelihood is very low. Correct me if I'm wrong here. I think that anyone can fall into that state, right? At any time. So while you say, I'm the problem in my home, my family is trained, my support network is around me, all credit to them. I think if we take that next step, it's to say, hey, listening audience, you could be that same person. Whether or not you have this episode in your history is irrelevant. You never know when it's going to happen. And this illuminates and underscores why we do what we do at Walk the Talk America. Because Mike and I here, we're like, we don't anticipate ever becoming suicidal to the point that we need our cause a pause items. He's got pictures of his daughter. I've got stickers of the podcast and WTTA stuff that, would make me stop in that moment. I think it would make me stop. And I'm wondering if you're in that same mentality or if it's like, no, this is a little different because you don't have any diagnoses. You're not maintaining medication, which also I think is a poor idea. If you don't need it, don't take it. What's your thoughts on that? Like, this is every man, right? This is every woman.
So it is. And because what I deal with now, right, I work inside the jail and prison system, director of a program under One Community USA. What we do is I go in there and they go, oh, okay, so what are you going to offer me? Are you going to give me a job? Are you going to give me a house? Are you going to give me this? I was like, no, I don't do nothing for you. And they look at me shocked. They're like, well, why are you in here then? Because I'm here to teach you how to change your mindset, because they're no different than veterans. They're no different than any of us. Any of us could be in jail at any point for one little mistake. And what I try to get with them is the changing of a mindset. Again, what made me so successful was being able to change my mindset. I said, why? I asked them, why are you in jail? Well, I did this. No. I don't care about your crime. Why are you in jail? And they get confused. I said, you're in jail because you haven't dealt with the trauma you either know or unknowingly, even recently or in your past, that you haven't dealt with. And until you deal with those traumas, you will always have this be your cycle, because you don't know why you do drugs. You don't know why you drink. You don't know why you do domestic abuse. You don't know why you have anger issues. Until you dissect those, get a support system that's going to help you, get the resources you need for that. I can give you $1 million, a Cadillac, a house, all that stuff. I guarantee you, you're going to blow it. And then I tell them, you need to go to these programs. And I just did this a couple of weeks ago. I asked them, how many of y'all been to NAA or anger group and all this? Majority of them will raise their hand. And then I ask them, how many of you guys have went because you wanted to go? Not because of the court, not because your wife, not because your kid, not because the spouse, baby mama, whatever asked you to go or made you go or gave this as a stipulation for you to come back. How many ever went? None. None of them raised their hands. And I said, that's the problem. It isn't the problem with the resources and the programs. You are. Until you are ready to break this cycle, and that's either mental health, anything. Until you are willing to break this cycle, you're in that cycle.
You're speaking to something that's near and dear to my heart that I teach my students and my interns, my employees, anybody I come in contact with. I say, we're into problem resolution, not symptom treatment. And the problems don't have a diagnostic code and criteria attached to them. Problems are, as you listed, trauma history, the present or past, don't know where you're going in life, don't know how to navigate emotional situations, have crisis of existential nature that, revolves around your new job or whatever it is, right? I can't slap a code on that and send it off to insurance. I can slap a code on anxiety and send it off to insurance, but I don't want to sit there and play therapeutic whack-a-mole with your symptoms, which is exactly what you're highlighting there. Like, cool, you can just decide not to fight at the bar, but why are you fighting in the first place? We have to ask the why that leads to the output of the behavior that we don't like. And Clovertack, he says it's sort of like the whole recovering thing, right? Recovering in quotes. Recovering alcoholic, recovering gambler, etc. When this happens, we always allow for relapse. It keeps us vigilant for sure, because once you've done a thing, you can always do that thing. But I would submit that if a human being has done anything, you being a human have the same nature, and therefore you are capable of any of those things also, which means we have to acknowledge that when we have recovered, we can make peace with that and say, I'm a new person now. I've changed, right? And then we meet ourselves where we are and don't worry about those skeletons anymore. And we don't live in shame. We don't live in guilt. We move forward with a positive attitude, realizing that we have adjusted deep within us the problem areas, and we've resolved them, we've embraced them, we've set them aside, and we can move forward as new people. Now it's up to the audience whether or not they want to receive that as well. But deep down, if I know I'm different, then that's all that matters to me. It'll suck if my command staff doesn't believe me and I get terminated, but that's a them issue, not a me issue.
And I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and I've heard everything from the audience. Just like Michael asked me, I've heard, why are you not in jail? Why do you have a family? You shouldn't have a job. You shouldn't have this. You shouldn't have this. You shouldn't be this. I'd look at them and I straight up go, you're right. You're probably right, but I do. And I'm going to make the full advantage of my whatever has led me down this path to be able to help, one, re-educate you, and two, is help somebody inside this room that isn't wanting to talk. I put myself and my family on the line doing this stuff and expose us to criticism, remarks, everything. But I also know we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it for the ones that can't speak. We're doing it for the ones that have already passed away and their families are grieving. We're doing this for future generations that don't even know that they need this yet. We're doing this to re-educate officers. We're doing this re-educate mental health professionals. I've had many discussions with them because I'm trying to get them to understand from my point of view what a suicidal person thinks, and this is what we need, and this is how we, that's how we live. How that looks. So there's a lot of things that I fully understand my situation. I fully understand how lucky I am, how it's rare, how I'm 1%, how this doesn't happen for anybody else, how somebody with a lesser activity or thing gets worse. I understand that. I get it. So I'm here to try to help and do the best I can with the gifts that I have been given.
As we wind up here, because we're a little over an hour, and that tends to be everybody's attention span these days, talk a little bit about the Suicide Prevention Resource Center and the work you do there.
So the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, I sit on a lived experience advisory board there. And what it is there was a lot of us doing this for a lot of years, going out, sharing our stories and everything. And we really didn't have leadership. We really didn't have somebody around us to gather us together. And so the Suicide Prevention Resource Center said, hey, we're going to start up a lived experience committee. And we all kind of was like, okay, well, we've been doing this. And what's funny is the director of it, nobody knew her. A lot of us knew each other. We show up at conferences. Hey, how's it going, Kevin? Hey, how's it going? Or we see each other, but they put somebody in charge of it, and none of us knew, which I thought was very smart of them because of the politicalness that goes with this game that we do, and all the stuff that happens behind the scenes in mental health and us speakers. That was one of the most brilliant things they did, because that person they knew us, but didn't know us. And so there wasn't any one person that could be like, oh, well, I'm going to be favoritism to a certain person. So we sit on this committee and all of us come together, and it's really kind of our leadership. We still go do what we want to do, but we kind of let them know so that they can be aware of what we do. And then they kind of get research from across the country that may need somebody with lived experience, and they'll reach out to each one of us that has our specialties. And so it's really, really good, because it's what we needed for speaking so that we can go out and be more effective than we were before. And they're really leading the charge of it. They went to the White House when we did the suicide prevention, or the action plan that was signed in April. They were there. I was there with Holden. Actually, Holden was the only kid in there, which was pretty cool. And so they're a great resource for all the suicide stuff. They're really tuned in with the communities, and they're really tuned in with the marginalized groups. They're really into the Native Americans, or in the African Americans. They're on all sides of the DEI type stuff. They really got their fingers, and a person like me in each and every group that you could think of.
Cool. And last question is, you're in Texas. Are you connected with a network of therapists there who are friendly to this demographic, the military, the cops, the gun-owning demographic, that there's a little pool of trusted therapists there? Because we frequently have people asking for referrals in and around broader Texas, irrespective of where they may live, to a mental health provider directory is a little thin. And the couple people we do know have jobs that aren't a private practice. They can't necessarily accept everybody. So I end up, texting people, do you know somebody? Do you have a pool of therapists that are trusted that you refer to in your area?
Yeah, I mean, under
send them our way?
Under our organization, we do. The other half is we work with bridging the gap between police and the community. So we'll have retired police officers and police officers from the community going into barbershops. And so within that, we have built mental health within that. So we're working with a school actually to get some of their students, as part of their live training, to be able to come into the jails or into the barbershops and salons to be able to provide mental health classes for the people that are just coming in. So we have a couple of entities that we're working with on the mental health side. Amen Clinic, who does life coaching and spec training. I'm part of them. Actually, I went through their program. Some of them have come and taught mental health at the jail. So we do have a pretty good pool of people that we use for both of our programs.
That'd be great. If any of them are interested, you want to send them our way to add to the directory, that would be really cool too, because it sounds like you've got the pulse there of who's coming out and who can respond. What's the school?
So this is Chicago School of Psychology.
Oh, nice. Okay.
They're based out of Dallas.
Right on. Yeah. It's a good one. Mike, you got anything else?
No, man. I just, I guess, I want to say that for your wife, like, all superheroes don't wear capes, right? Like, she's a perfect example of that. I'm glad you found yourself an awesome human. Thank you for sharing your story. It's not an easy one to share, right? Like, not a lot of people they usually try to bury that stuff, but it sounds like you're using this for all positive things. And when people say to you, like, why aren't you in jail, or why aren't you this? Obviously, there's a higher calling for you, and that's why. Right? Like, you're here to heal people and help people get through all the stuff they've gone through, because you know what it's like and you've been there. So thank you for coming on the show today, man. And the last question that I have for you is, how do you tend to your mental health these days?
So again, I have a great support system. I've learned my triggers. I've learned how to deal with them. I learned how to educate those around me on it. So I do a lot of things. I play video games. I do photography. I love to travel. I spend a lot of time with my family, a lot of time with my son, engaging in activities as he does, because he knows, he knows how to bring out the good in me. So I really do a lot of things, within the personal life, just to stay good.
How do people find you?
I don't know. I don't really have things set up.
I don't know.
I don't have I don't know. I'd have. I mean, I'm on Facebook and I have a Twitter and stuff, but I don't. People ask me that too. I like I need to really set up something, but I don't have anything because I just word them out.
Kevin writes, "Ask the Pentagon."
Yeah, yeah. They know how to get.
Pentagon knows how to find you. Well, I sure appreciate it. And I think everybody listening appreciates it. This is a great story for many, many reasons. And we're going to continue to reference you in some of the conversations we have. And this is illustrative of how things can go out the right way and, create somebody who's going to keep moving the ball forward to make Earth better. So thank you for taking the time. Thank you for doing what you do and continuing to inspire yourself and also those around you, because it's a good story. So appreciate you. And thanks for everybody for paying attention and logging in. And please share this around so that we can spread the love. It's Valentine's Day here, 2025. Spread the love.
Thank you, guys.
On behalf of our Walk the Talk America family, we wish you all great mental wellness. Bye-bye.